Hello everybody and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Shellie Geigle with J&S Hobbies and Crafts, and today's tutorial is on how to make this large 8.5 by 11 Sleeping Beauty album. Now this album has about, I think it's about 2 3/4, 2 7/8 spine by the time we're done wrapping it. The design of this is based off this album, and I did an album share. I know some of you picked up the paper and you just wanted the pre-cutting guide, and you can download the pre-cutting guide for this one if you want to just lay your papers for that. But when we cut the paper in this tutorial, it is for the Sleeping Beauty. So here we go. First things first, 8.5 by 11. And we did add this really nice spine cover, and that's available at my store. We have some bling. It came out absolutely beautiful. And if you want to spice yours up a little bit and add some flowers, you could. Up front is our little fold out. We have a place for a photograph. We can even slip one right back behind in here. And we can journal too if we wanted to add something there. So let's open this up. This came out beautiful. I absolutely love how this came out. Up front we have a tuck, and we just made this folder together. I have not completed my picture mats. I have not added in my solid colored cardstock for the inside of some of this, but I did get a few things in the album so that you can kind of see what it looks like. So here's the folder, and this is in the tutorial. This is magnetic, and it's what holds this folder shut. So this opens up. We got a pocket. This opens up. Place a photo in there, small one, whatever you want to do. And then this will open up. And I'm going to kind of push this over so you can see. And I got a couple picture mats. Now, at the end of the tutorial, there is not a whole lot of decorative paper. In fact, all that's going to be left is the inside cover, which would have our sentiments. We have a back full sheet, which is all of our cut-aparts, and then there's scraps. And some of these I seamed together, my scraps, to make a picture mat with patterned paper. So these were just left over. This is one I seamed together, and it will work perfectly for my photograph. So I get that pattern paper effect back on here. Here you can just place a photograph right up over here, or if you choose to do here, however you wanted to lay yours. Moving on to page 2, we have a pocket up front, and I have a couple picture mats. This one's done with my cream colored, and I have my white matting back behind. And then this one is from scraps, actually 3 small scraps, and it came out beautiful. Over here what we have is a magnetic folder, and there's a strap. The strap lays in here, the magnet catches, and it holds down the waterfall. Just place right in here, put a photograph, and we conserve paper, so we're just going to open this up and you can see. Lots of places for photographs. And we even get the story in there. Moving on to page 3, we have a very large pocket in the back. He's even a tuck, so you can tuck something back behind him if you wanted to. Now with my scraps, I just made this small little folder. And I believe there may have been a cut-apart sheet or some of it left too. So with the cut-apart panels, I cut it down and I made this into a folder, and I do not have any solid colored cardstock laying in there. Nice big pocket. Coming over here, we have a side pocket, and I made a folder. And it's magnetic. We have some of the story here, and I'm going to pull this down. Some of the story over here, and in here we can lay our photographs. So one thing about this, even though we have the horse, you can lay a photograph and still retain part of that horse coming down onto the page, and it'll look good. So this is kind of fun over here, Sleeping Beauty. We made it so you can tuck picture mat back behind. All I have is this right now in there, but I think it looks absolutely beautiful. Just tuck it back behind. So that was page 4. Let's go to page 5. 5 and 6 are the same. Each one has a large fold out with a pocket up front. And I just made this, and this was done with my solid colored cardstock, and I made this flip folder for a photograph. Here's our pocket. There is a little tuck area back behind the horse that if you wanted to place a photograph on a mat, you could raise it up and then put in your pocket. Over here is a pocket, and all I have is this for right now in there. And I tried to go along with the paper for the story. So first, let's open up over here. And we have a large side pocket that you can slide a picture mat in there. We also have a tuck back here, and you can place your photograph right on over here. We'll use Tanner. And you can also have a photograph right on here to layer right up on top. So it's a very large layout. We have a story over here. If you didn't care to keep the story in on it, you could be placing your photos over there too. So we're just going to come on over here, same thing, and we have this area that's a tuck for a picture mat. You can also lay one here, and here is our side pocket, very large. Going on to the next pages here, we have a very large pocket in the back, and what I did with some of those panels is just make some large folders so I can lay some photographs in there. Right up front we have a magnetic little folder that folds out, and we did place some of our solid colored cardstock in here, and there's a place right here. One thing about this is you can tuck higher up on in there, and you can also utilize the back pocket. Coming to this page, this folds out. We have a place for a photograph over here. We also have a pocket over here, and I have my solid colored cardstock. You can also lay a photograph right on in there, so there is room. Coming to our last pages, they are identical. 2 large fold outs, and we make these folders together, and what these folders do up front is they hold our flip down. And I still have yet to put my solid colored cardstock in there, so that just sits there. Same thing over here, we make this one together, and it's holding this flip down. This opens up, and we have all the space to place a photograph here, or if you choose to place one over here, you can choose right here. And if you didn't care about the story, you can place another. It's up to you. Over here, same thing. This is all open. And also over here, I'm placing photos. So that is what we are making today. It's a fun album. I'm really happy with how this came out. So let's move on into the materials list, and then we're going to start putting this together. And you will need to download the free PDF of the materials and pre-cutting guide. It's all on one sheet. And there's a link below the video on where to find that. Let's review the materials that I used in this tutorial. First off, you're going to need 2 of the Stamperia Sleeping Beauty paper packs. These are the 12 by 12 size. For the album wrap, you can use 3 sheets of the American Crafts 80-pound, or if you have a 65-pound 12 by 12 size, whatever it is that you have. I'm going to be using about 3 sheets of this. And then I'm going to be switching off for the inside and everything else with the Coordinations 110-pound white cardstock. And this is 8.5 by 11. Now this is something new. It's 8.5 by 11 piece of a specialty embossed vinyl. And this one's the brown. On the flip side, it's kind of like a felt material, so it will grab our album. I tested this out already, and this is an 8.5 by 11 piece. We're going to be using this to wrap around our spine. But I did test it out on an album that I already have to make sure that it works, and it does. And it looks really sharp. And when you open it up, it does not mess up anything. So you can see on the spine there. So that's what we're going to be using for the spine. You're going to want Tyvek. Tyvek is a material that's hard to tear, and we will be using just a couple strips off this, and it's for our binding. You're going to want 2 pieces of medium weight 12 by 12 chipboard. It does not matter if it's black or craft, just 2 sheets. And this is for our covers and our spine. Another thing that you are going to want to incorporate is some solid colored cardstock. Now I chose this. This is like a very pale yellow. And I'll be using this for my picture mats and inside the album. Here's the thing. When I created, this is, I'm using the same design as what I used in this. It's a large album. And one thing is when I created this, I used the photoplay paper, and it had 12 sheets of 12 by 12 paper. The paper that we're using only has 10 double-sided sheets. And some of the sheets, like for instance, we've got panel sheets in here, we're not going to be able to use for, well, we'll be using them, but you know what I'm saying, we're less sheets. So we may need to use some solid colored cardstock. We'll be needing that for our picture mats anyway. I did pull aside some very light blue just in case. I'd like to use some light blue in with my picture mats. But this is just a very light cream colored cardstock that I'll be using majority. And I don't know, I just grabbed the stack what I had, but you're going to need some sheets, so just have some handy there. Let's move on. Magnets. Now magnets, what I did in mine is I used one pack, and then for the rest I didn't have anything magnetic to keep these closed. And you can do that as well. Use one pack and then you just won't have any magnets for the rest, or you can use 2 packs like I am in this tutorial to make it consistent throughout. You're going to want some bling on the roll, and that is going to be on our cover. Now, Doris went out of business, and all I have is the bling on the roll with the 8 different rolls. But that's okay because we can clip and get a single strand, because that's all we need for the cover. So I do have this available in my store. What I have is what I have. I have been checking around for other sources, but I'm not coming up with anything good. I'll be using some leftover single strand. This is what I have left out of my other one. Let's talk adhesives. You may want to get a couple packs of 1/4 inch. I'm going to try and use 1 3/8 and 1 1/4 inch in this. Adhesives. I'm going to be using my Art Glitter Dries Clear Glue, and I have my metal tip. You're going to want to have some sort of fabric tack for this specialty vinyl. That is what I used when I was checking it out to see how it works on the spine, which it works excellent. I love it. But I did use the fabric tack. If you choose to use this, you'll definitely want to take off your metal tip and get a little more on there, because what's going to happen is this is thicker, this is thinner. And when you first put down your glue, for instance, when we're gluing this down to our album, it's first going to try and absorb the glue. So you might have to use a little bit more of this. But I did have good results with this. I have not tried this. That is it. Other things you are going to need, you're going to need a paper cutter, you're going to need a ruler, pencil, craft knife, bone folder, and maybe have some other things handy there. And you'll definitely want your scoring board and paper cutter. Let's start putting our base album together. I'm really excited about this one. We're on the base album construction section, and we're going to review the pre-cuts and scoring from our PDF that gave us all that. So you'll definitely want to download that. We're going to review the pieces that we cut. We had two pieces that were 8.5 by 11. They were our chipboard covers, and there's two. We had a 2.5 by 8.5 chipboard piece we called a spine. We had two pieces of tie bag. We didn't label them. They're pretty easy to recognize. They're 1 inch by 8.5 inches. There were two. We had two pieces that we cut 10.5 by 12 inches. We called this album wrap. We also had a 4.5 by 10.5 piece. We called it an album wrap. And these were done on 12 by 12 sheets so that we can get the size correct. We had one piece that is 4 by 8.25, and we called it our inner spine cover. We had two pieces that were 8.25 by 10.5. We called these inner covers. Our last pieces, we had 4 pieces that we cut at 8.25 by 11 inches. We called these our inner pages, and it just said you can label just one. But what we did was we laid this on our scoring board so that we were 11 inches across. On each one, we scored at a 1/2 inch. All right, that's all we need for our pre-cuts to get started. First thing that we're going to work with is our album wrap pieces. So we have a 4.5 by 10.5, and we have the two 10.5 by 12 inches. Let's grab one of our 10.5 by 12s. Let's grab our 1/4 inch score tape. On the right hand side of one of our pieces, we're going to lay a piece of our 1/4 inch score tape right along the edge without going over. If you are a beginner or just your first time joining me, welcome. One thing, if you are a beginner and first time visiting me, anytime you lay down your score tape, or even if you're using your glue, after you're done, you are going to burnish it. And that is exactly what I'm doing, is I'm making sure the tape has made contact to the paper to get all the air out from underneath. If you have any score tape that kind of peeks over the edge from tearing your tape rather than cutting it, you'll want to clip that off. Now this is what I like to do to try and get straight. I'm going to grab my paper cutter out, but I'm not going to cut anything. What instead I'm going to do is use the paper guide. Just place this right up against there. I like to use my craft knife to be able to get that backing off that score tape. Next, we're going to need our 4.5 by 10.5, and we are 10.5 inches this way. So what we're going to do is we'll put this one up against the paper guide, and we'll just be really careful, and we're going to overlap over onto that score tape. Just make sure you've overlapped enough, and I think I'm pretty good there. If you're a little off, that's okay. It won't make much of a difference because this does get wrapped. So I'm just burnishing now. Let's grab our next one. And here it is. And what I'm going to do on the left side is run that score tape. So in my tutorials, because they are beginner friendly, we do start off very slow, and as we get going in the tutorial, if you've already made a pocket a couple times or folded on your score lines, we can pick up the pace just a little bit. But for now, we like to do slow so that everyone has the opportunity to learn and to do this. So again, here's my other piece. And I am going to remove that backing. I've got it up against my paper guide to keep me straight. Now this long sheet, we're going to place right on top of that. And then we will burnish. I'm going to get this out of the way here. The next piece that we want is our chipboard spine. Let's grab our score tape, and what you're going to want to do is lay it on your chipboard, and we are just going to line this all the way around to looking like a picture frame. Once we have that, let's go one down the middle and then a strip on each side of that. I'm going to get my other little burnishing tool down, my other thing, and I'm going to burnish this down really good. Alright, I'm going to show you before we do anything. I'm going to scoot this up a bit. What's going to happen is I'm going to remove the score tape backing. And you see where your 4.5 by 10.5 sits right in between these two larger sections? Look at where your seams are here. This piece is going to place right middle between. So I'll have a seam here and a seam over here. And when I place this, I'm going to want to leave about 1 inch of white cardstock here and 1 inch down here. And that's important because we need to be able to wrap. So I'm going to release the score tape backing, and we're going to place this together. There is no rush. Take your time on this. Pause the video if needed. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed, I'm going too fast, or whatever the case may be, take your time. It's not a race. Okay, in between, here's a seam, here's a seam, so right in between, and I'm going to try and leave about 1 inch up here and 1 inch down here. Approximately, anyway. And I don't want to get my head in the video, but I think that this is pretty straight. As straight as it's going to get, right? Okay, I'll get the other side in a minute. I just want to put a little pressure there. The next thing is our chipboard covers, and I'm going to show you first what's going to happen before we do it. So this chipboard cover, and we are 8.5 inches, is going to lay near this, but we need to leave a 1/4 inch spacing in between. And we're going to do the same thing over here. And we're going to line these chipboard pieces up with the bottom of the spine, top of the spine, and we'll be looking to make sure that we still have that 1/2 or that 1 inch spacing. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my score tape, and I'm going to go all the way around like a picture frame to start. I have mine down, and I think you could see that. Next, what I'm going to do is go one down the middle, and then I'm going to go one in between there and over here, and I'm going to stick a strip here, 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 and here. Just like that. This is going to place on this side. So let's take a moment and burnish down that tape really good. And then we're going to place this together. I can't wait to get started on this. As soon as this is all put together, then we get to play with the beautiful paper. Get the outside all decorated. Okay, again, I'm going to stay a 1/4 inch away, and I'm going to try to line up the bottom of this with the bottom of this one. So about a 1/4 inch. Oh, I think that's good enough. It might be a little off. That's okay. I still have enough to wrap, but it's kind of awkward for me. I'm kind of short, and I don't want to get my head in the video. Let's grab our next piece, and we'll first start off by going around the outside edges like a picture frame. We're going to kind of do the same thing. Start laying our score tape. Once you have your score tape down, we're going to burnish. And here we go. I got the score tape backing off, and I'm going to try and be as even as I can. Now you can go ahead and measure that spacing if you'd like, or you can just kind of eyeball it. And that's what I'm doing here. I'll use this to kind of press it down. Let's flip it over, and we are carefully going to burnish. So here's a tip if you are new. You see where I had told you to place this middle piece in between those two seams? If you go ahead and start making your own albums, make sure your seam is never where your bending is, your hinging is going to be. Let's get our Tyvek out really quick. These are those two, 1 inch by 8.5. And I'll grab my 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to lay a piece on each edge and one down the middle. And what I do with this one, I'll be doing with this one. If you are new to Tyvek, it's a material that is very flexible, and sometimes you may end up with a little seam. That's just all part of it. You can clip that seam if you'd like, if it's bothering you, or you can tack it down with a little glue, whichever you like. So what we're going to do now is do the same thing on this one. So let's get this one ready. If you get any wrinkling while you're putting your tape on, it's okay. This does get covered up. I bumped the camera and kind of moved it into a different position for us so you can see a little better. Tyvek. So what we're going to do here is we'll remove the score tape backing. You see where our little valley is right here, our spacing? We're going to place this evenly over that spacing, top to bottom on each side. And we'll do that together. I do like to tell you sometimes what we're going to do before we do it. I have my first one. A tip about score tape is you will definitely want to wash your hands and free them of any lotions and oils before handling it. It's almost impossible for us to keep our hands off it when it's on a roll style like this. So keeping our hands free of the lotions and oils off our skin when handling it is always best so that you don't decrease the potency of it. We're going to place this one now evenly over. Whoops. If you get it on crooked, that's okay. It gets covered. Now that we have that done, we're going to start working the sides of our paper. So I'm going to have a hand down. I kind of have it up underneath the lip of my cardstock, and we're just going to slowly work the paper to bend it upwards. And then we'll just kind of use our hand here. You can also use the side of your tool, whether it be you're using something like this or the back side of this, to kind of help you. We're going to do the same exact thing over here. Just kind of work it. One thing is you're not going to want to pull and tug it over. You're going to want to let it go and do it. Okay. The next thing is we're going to work on the bottom and the top one. So let's start over here. Sometimes I just like to start in the middle slowly without pulling it all the way up. Just kind of work it and then work my way out to the sides. For me, that works the best. And it's a slow process so that we don't tear. Another thing is when we're wrapping, sometimes on the seams, you can get some splits. And I will tell you what to do if that happens after we're done wrapping. That's when you take care of it. Okay, we'll gently use our tool. Well, done with that side, we're going to do the same thing over here. That looks pretty good. Let's grab our 1/4 inch score tape, and we're going to make this real simple. On your chipboard, we're just going to go all the way around the outside edge like a picture frame. We're going to start there. Every time I teach an album, I might do a step differently than I've done before. It keeps it interesting, and it also shows you that there's not just one way to do these. There are so many ways to do an album. And there's really no right or wrong way that I know of. It's just whatever you're happy with. Same goes with the hinging system that you use. And for me, this hinging system works, and it's my favorite, so that's how I teach it. It's easy, especially for the beginners. And it's easy for me too. And I've been doing this for quite some time. So I've got that there. I'll burnish that in a moment. The next thing we're going to do is on the outside edges, without going over, we're going to lay some score tape. Now keep in mind, you don't have to go all the way to the edge because we will be clipping this off at an angle, leaving a little space. So I'm going to do mine going all the way around, and then I will show it to you. So I have the score tape down on mine. I think you could see that. And I do have to adjust my lighting here. I think it's a little bright, but I think you can see. Okay, it's time to clip our edges. Now you may have wider over here than you do down here, and that's perfectly fine. So the idea is, you see where the edge, the corner of your chipboard is? We're going to be cutting this at an angle, leaving about 1/8 of an inch space. Now you don't need to measure this unless you want to, but I'm just going to clip. And we're going to do this on each one of the corners. Okay, so all your edges should be like that. So the first thing that we're going to do is fold in our sides. We can do that. I'm going to peel back some of this from up on my chipboard. Okay, again, don't pull and stretch it over. We've already worked the paper, just fold it over and pat it down and move out. Just like that. You can then take your tool and burnish. Let's go on over to this side now. Same thing, just pull it over, press, and then we can use our tool. Alrighty, it's time to take off this down here, the score tape, and I'm going to show you this, how to tuck your edges in so they're not so pointy. You'll want to grab your tool and put a finger down on the bottom flap and place your hand here. This tool goes up next to your chipboard. You will swing it around like you're rounding a corner. And what you're going to get is that. Kind of just softens the edges up a little bit. Same thing over here. I'm going to place a hand here, one on this so I don't tear this by coming around the corner. And I know my hand is in the way, but I am right-handed, so I'm going to try. So you can still see over here. Swing it around like coming around the corner. Now, when folding this up, I like to kind of get it first going softly in the middle and then just pressing it out. Just like that. Okay, you can then use your tool to help you with those corners if they're poking up. Just kind of. Let's turn this around and we're going to do the same thing. Holding this down with my fingers, holding this down, taking my tool and coming around the corner there. Over here, same thing. Try to do this without getting my head in my, so that you can see. And now we're going to softly just tap this up, little by little. Let's grab our tool and burnish this down. So here it is. Now, I didn't get any splits down here on my seams. They look really good, but I'm going to tell you in case you do, because it happens to all of us. What you're going to do is if you have where it is splintering, like right here on the seam or something, take your glue. Make sure your fingers are clean so you don't smudge it brown. But what you will do is you will dab a little glue under that little splinter. Once you dab a little glue, you can take your hand and go the way it's supposed to go, in the direction. Once you've done that, tap it twice and then don't touch it again. This glue will dry quickly, and if you keep dabbing at it, what's going to happen is it's going to tear your paper. Alright, so we are looking good, and we are going to get ready to start placing the rest of our stuff here. Grab your 4 by 8 1/4 inner spine cover. Now this piece is very important because what we're going to do is we're going to lay score tape completely over this. It's going to lay centered side to side, up and down, so you'll only have a little bit of white cardstock showing up here and a little bit down here. It's going to center top and bottom and then side to side, just like that. And the reason why this is so important is that we get all that score tape down is because when we do lift our sides up, we do not want any bubbling in the middle from lack of adhesive underneath there, because this is what our page hinges sit on. So to me, it's very important. I'm going to grab my 3/8 because it's a little bit wider. The first thing I'm going to want to do is go around the outside edges like a picture frame without going over. If you go over, you'll want to clip off any excess that you can see. And we'll inspect our piece before we place it anyway. My work desk, I've got to get a new cover for this. It's filthy looking. So we have that. Next, we're just going to line our score tape side by side until this is completely covered. So I'm coming to where I am almost done and I have a small spacing in there. I'll use my 1/4 inch score tape to get in there. And if it overlaps a little, that is fine. Let's burnish our piece. Take a moment to make sure this all is down and the air is out from underneath. Now flip it over and inspect. If you can even see a little bit of your score tape peeking over, you are going to want to clip that. Okay. So we laid our score tape down. Now it's time to place this. I'm going to remove the backing and we're going to lay this down together. Okay, in case you forgot, we are going to center this top and bottom. You will have a little bit of your white cardstock down here still showing. And we're going to place this as even as we can, and you should be able to cover that Tyvek. Here I go, as best I can. I think that's even enough. And we're going to burnish this down really good. Sometimes when you are burnishing, you're going to hear crackling underneath your paper. That is your score tape making contact and the air coming out from underneath. The next two that we are going to get after is the 8 1/4 by 10 1/2. Set these off to the side. What we're going to do now is we're going to place our hand on that spine. Slip your hand underneath in the middle of your chipboard and slowly pull up your side. This is why it's so important that we use the adhesive all the way across, because if you have bubbling up right now, stop, burnish down. If you use glue and it keeps happening, that's because there's no glue under that spot. And that's why I prefer to use the score tape, because then I know everything's covered. But place your hand down and slowly move it up. Now, do not pull it all the way over. You're going to rip out your side. Just slowly work it, okay? And that's about as far as you are going to go. When it hits my hand in the middle, I'm done with that side. So I'll place a hand here, get this underneath this, and I will slowly and work it until it hits my hand there. Now this is going to be stiff to start, but once we start getting everything in there and it's down, it'll start relaxing. I really need to clean this desk. I can tell right now. So now's a good time to check to make sure that everything is burnished down. It looks good. Let's grab those 8 1/4 by 10 1/2 sheets. And what we're going to do is we'll be placing score tape on the side we wrote on. And you see where your hinge is now because we pulled it up. What's going to happen with this, you will notice that the top and bottom of this is going to line up with that inner spine cover we did. Here is our hinge, and we want to stay at least about a 1/2 inch away from this one. And if you were to just lay your paper over, you will notice that it will give you enough room over here too. It will kind of frame that inside, and it covers up any imperfections from when we wrapped. Same goes with the cover. So whatever we do on this one with score tape, we're going to do with that one. So first things first, let's go around our piece like a picture frame. Remember, on the side that you wrote on. After we've gone around all the way around the edges, we're going to go one down the middle. We'll go one in between here and here. And then I'm going to put some shorter pieces in between, just to make sure. Because what's going to happen is this is going to be our inside cover, and then our decorative paper is going to lay on top of that. So this is what I did. Let's go ahead and get this one ready. And then we're going to lay these together. So I'm just finishing up with this one. And I'm going to burnish this down really good on both of these. And then I'm going to remove the score tape backing. And then we're going to place these together. And don't worry if you forgot what I said before. I always make sure that everyone remembers. So, hope I'm not repetitive, but I think it's important because, especially when you're new, it's easy to forget. And my dogs, Sissy, Sasha, and Tanner will be joining us in this tutorial. And you may hear them in the background, like what's happening now. From time to time, I do try to edit it out, as I know not everybody is pet lovers, but they are my companions during the day. Okay, I got all this off. Again, look to see where your hinge is back here, just by simply opening it up and looking. So this is pretty easy because we know the top and the bottom is going to line up with that inner spine cover. So I'm going to just kind of look and shoot it on over. I'll leave about a 1/2 inch spacing from that hinge. And I notice I have a finger under here and a finger under here over here. And I am just trying to line it up first in the corner and then trying to pull it straight across the bottom. Now, one thing about score tape, it is not forgiving. And on this next page that we placed together, I'm going to show you something you can do because these are large pieces to place and it can be very easy to get these on a little crooked. But please know that if you do get it on crooked, the chances is that you are not going to be able to tell once we get our decorative paper on. So please don't feel like you have to start all over or rip something out, okay? So I'm going to get the score tape backing off this, and then I'll show you a little tip in case that was difficult for you to line up. So here is my other piece. Take your wet glue, like your art glitter glue, and what you can do is dab a little bit going across the top there. What that's going to do for you is give you, and you'll want to line up from the top to start, but it's going to give you a little wiggle room there so that the score tape's not forgiving. So if you need a little wiggle room, start at the top with your glue and it will allow it before the score tape grabs. So again, about a 1/2 inch away from that hinge. Well, that's as close as even as I'm going to get it. Otherwise, I'm going to have my whole head in the video because usually it takes me time to set these. I like to stand up over it because I'm not real tall so that I can see over my page. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But when I'm doing tutorials, I don't like getting my head in the video, especially if I'm up at 2 in the morning and my hair's all crazy, like, you know. Okay, so this is what we have here. We're good. We are now ready to start placing our inner pages. And then we are going to be moving on to decorating the outside. So we've already scored these, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to fold on your score lines, and you'll use your tool. So we'll get all these ready, and this is our hinge. I'm going to situate these so that the peak is up on all of them. We're going to grab our 3/8 inch score tape, and here's my peak, here's my hinge. I'm going to place a piece of 3/8 inch score tape right down the middle without getting on the hinge and not going over. So I'll be careful. Right down the middle there. And then we're going to burnish. We're going to inspect our piece, flip it over, and if you can see any score tape, you will definitely want to clip that off. So there's our first one. We're going to do that with the other three. So let's get that ready to go. And then I'll show you how we're going to place these. I have all the score tape on. I've burnished it. And we're going to work with one at a time. So I'll set these other ones off to the side. I'm going to grab my album. Now the first thing I'm going to want to do is, you see where the score tape is? I'm going to flip it so the score tape is down. I will remove the score tape backing so the sticky is down. I'm going to pull up one side. Now this top and bottom will line up with our inner covers, our inner spine cover. So this makes it real simple. When we pull that up, I'm going to push it all the way until it stops and hits this, and I'm going to line it up with the bottom of that. And then I'm going to press it. So just take your time. The first one is kind of awkward. The other ones just fall in line. So pull up your side. And I'm going to burnish right here a little better. There we go. Pull it up. Matched up with the bottom. And I think that's pretty good. Then I'll press it. Now we're going to definitely want to burnish this down really good. Just be careful around your hinging. We'll pull it over and we will burnish. Okay, here's our next one. I'm going to take off the score tape, backing, and this is the easy part. Here's our first page. The sticky side is down. I'm going to put this until it hits up next to this and lines up with the bottom and top of that page. So as soon as I have it, it goes down. So these are really simple. They just fall right in line there. Let's keep going with this. Again, make sure you've inspected your sheet. Make sure there's no score tape peeking over the sides. And here's my last. Line that right up. And they are in. See? Okay, I have writing on one of mine, and you should too. It should be the one that identifies. You can choose to erase this if you'd like, or just leave it. It does get covered up, but I am going to do this. So find your front, open up your book, and we're going to label these. This one here, we're going to put a 1. That's page 1. Here's my second sheet, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That way, our pages on the PDF will match up with this, and it's always easier to label things. Okay, once you close this, I want you to write front. There you go. We are now moving on to decorating the outside of our album. We're on to decorating the outside of our album. We have one pre-cut. We cut a piece that was 5 inch by 8 3/4. We called it an outside folder. We laid this on our scoring board, so we were 8 3/4 across. And we scored at 4 3/8. Now I did put a note, make sure I got that. Yeah, 4 3/8. Now you can fold on that. Now I did make a note on the PDF that if you are using the Tula Norbert paper, instead of doing the Sleeping Beauty, this is the only adjustments that pretty much I made. And yours would have been 5 1/4 by 8 1/2, and then it told you to score it at, after laying 8 1/2 across, you would score it at 4 1/4. So, but I am teaching for the Sleeping Beauty, so there are some adjustments to accommodate this paper, but I did want to put that out there for the thing. First things first, let's get our paper out. One thing that I would like us to do, and it's going to make it much easier for us to grab at, is I would like you to go ahead and match up the papers and just put them, like both of these go together. We have 2 of these, and just put them in a pile together. It's going to make it so much easier to find our paper by doing this. So let's take a moment and do that. When you're doing this, do be careful when you are separating out your pages so that you don't tear it. I've got all mine organized, so the first sheet we want to pull out is this one. It is so gorgeous. And on the back, it looks like this. Now, if you're new to my tutorials, I do try to stay consistent on how I tell you to cut. Meaning, I will always say start from this end and measure over this way. We may have to turn our paper this way, and I will say start from here and we'll measure over this way. That way, I'm not telling you to measure down, up, over, across, anyway. So it just kind of keeps it all together for us and less confusing, since we do cut our papers in different ways. And then there may be times where I'll just hold up the paper and tell you where to cut. And on our first cut, that is what we're going to do. So if you were to look at your paper like this, notice we have this beautiful trellis, and then we have the brick. We're going to stick this on our paper cutter, and we're going to cut right underneath that to divide the bricks from this. And I'm going to grab my paper cutter. My blade is right here, so I'm just going to get this right on over here, get it right under the trellis, and I'm going to cut that first piece. This piece here, for now, what we're going to do with it is we're going to stick this in our reserves. Our reserves is just a scrap pile. We're reserving it to get back after it, to use it in the tutorial somewhere. All right, so now I want you to look at your paper like this. Your trellis is over here. We're going to measure over 8 1/2 inches and cut. So I'm going to line this up 8 1/2. And we're going to cut off this top piece. This piece we're going to stick in our reserves, our scrap pile. What I'm doing right now is I'm going to be centering this so it looks right on our piece. Our next cut, we're going to measure over 2 1/4 inches and cut. So 2 1/4. And I'm going to stick this in our reserves. Our next cut, we're going to measure over 8 1/2 inches and cut. Now it may seem like it's going to be short, but you'll see what we're going to be doing here. And we'll put that in our reserves. I'm going to place this out of the way. Let's grab the front. What's going to happen is we're going to lay this, and we're going to leave ourselves a white little border over here. And there should be a white border when we center this top and bottom. White, white. And we're just going to stick this off to the side. We're not gluing it down yet. Let's grab this piece. This is our spine cover. So one thing about this, if you have some chalk or some sort of marker that you can see, that's great. if you have nothing that you can mark on this that will come off, this is what I want you to do. So we'll place this off to the side. On your piece, we're going to need 2.5 inches. So what you'll want to do is line it up, and at the very bottom, lightly on your album, put a mark at 2.5. You'll also want to do that up here, just to make sure that you are where you should be. So I just put a little mark that I can erase. So what we're going to do is we're going to line that up with our 2 marks. And we're looking at it so we are 8.5 tall, and then we are 11 wide. So if you have a binder clip or something, that might be helpful for you to keep this in place while you do what you're going to do. So I'm just going to line that up, and binder clips are great for this, but I'm just going to use my little clamps here. Once you have that, you're going to keep the album closed, and you're just going to wrap this around to the back side. And what you're going to want is about 2.5 inches on the back side. So let's make our mark. And then for those of you that have something to mark yours with, I will give you the measurement. So I'm just going to wrap this around as best I can. I see where I need to be. And you'll pull it to where it is nice around there, and you can still see your little pencil mark where your 2.5 inch mark is. You should be able to if you marked it right there lightly. So what you can do now is make a little snip right where that is in it. Okay? You can also, well, the easiest way to get it straight is to line this up with something and cut it. Like if you have a cutting board or whatever, you can make sure you are straight. But the measurement, if you have something that that will cut it, if you just want to measure it, what I'm at is 8 inches. So it would be 8.5 by 8 inches. If you have a board that's like a grid, you'll have no problem lining up your stuff. I don't have a grid, so for me, all I'm doing is this old-fashioned way. Now for me, I can use a Sharpie to cut that, to make sure it's correct. And I might run a Sharpie down there. If you have a powerful paper cutter, it may just cut it for you. I stuck it on my Fiskars to line it up and make sure I was right. It did do this to the side of this, but you'll just want to make sure you cut that accurately. Alright, so I have my sheet, and you'll just definitely want to make sure that you are, when you're looking at this, you are 8.5 inches tall, the same as your album. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to flip this over to where I see this side, and I'm going to line this all the way around like a picture frame to start. One thing about score tape is before you handle it, you'll want to wash your hands with soap and water to get all the oils and to get any lotions off your skin. And after you're done laying all your score tape, you definitely want to burnish. And by burnishing, that gets the air out from underneath the tape, and so it makes good contact with your paper so you don't have any lipage. So I've got my score tape all the way around. I'm going to go one down the middle, and I'm going to go 2 on each side. So next thing is we're going to turn it over and make sure that we do not see any score tape peeking over the edges. Make sure it's pretty clean there. Let's grab the front of our album. Now for me, I am going to open this up because it'll be easier, but I'm going to lay this so I am even top, bottom, and the same sides there. One thing is you can do, if since this is a larger piece, you can squirt a little glue at the top or the bottom to help give you a little wiggle room so you can still maneuver your paper, because it is hard to lay paper that has score tape, because score tape is not forgiving. So once it catches, it catches. We don't want tape that's forgiving when we're building these albums. But I thought I would mention that little tip. Like I said, you can just squirt a little there and it'll give you a little wiggle room. So I'm going to try and get this on without getting my head in the video. And I think you can see what I'm doing here. And I'm going to go all the way over to the edge. Okay. Well, it's a little crooked, but that's okay. I'm not going to worry too much about that. Okay, we're not ready to place this yet. We're going to flip this over to the back side. In your paper pack, you will find this print. We're going to turn it sideways so we have an A and we have a fancy little S down here. It looks like an S. We're going to measure over 8.5 inches and cut. So I'm going to do that really quick. Get this all in the thing. 8.5. This piece I'll put in my reserves. So just in case you mismeasured this for wrapping around, we're going to cut this a little wider so that just in case when we wrap over, we make sure that this is long enough. Let's just measure over 10 inches and cut. And that will take care of anything. We'll put that in our reserves. I'm going to put this out of the way. And once again, here's the front. I'm going to flip it over. What we're going to do on the back is we are going to center that top and bottom, and we are going to lay this. So let's do our score tape, and we're going to lay our score tape the exact same way. Going all the way around, we'll go 1 down the middle and 2 on each side of that. And then we will burnish it, and then we'll lay it together on our piece. I have mine done. Again, let's inspect, make sure we didn't go over the edges with any score tape. And we'll remove that backing off the score tape. Okay, so the opening is over here, and we are going to place this evenly top and bottom. And then I'm going to open this up and burnish. Whoops. It is now time to grab this. And once again, make sure you are going the right way. You should be 8.5 inches tall. And that is what I am. So I'm going to get my fabric tack out. And here is my little pencil mark there, so I will make sure when I do this that I bring that all the way to the edge of my paper over here. So I'm going to make sure that I get this right along that edge really good. And we're just going to keep going with this. And you'll want to get the glue right here on the side of your album. And you'll want to get glue in here. And then we can always wipe up any. All right, I'm 8.5. I'm going to bring that over, center this top and bottom as best I can. Make sure I'm straight. And it will give you a little time so you can make sure you're straight. And we'll just, now one thing is do not sit there and glue it all down when it's flat, because you won't be able to, you can do it right now to make sure that you got this part down, but you're going to want to open this up when you glue the rest. Okay, I think I got that. So now we're going to work on the next section, which is back here. And we're going to make sure we get it right up there. Come on, glue. And we'll get right along that, get it right next to it. Definitely. And then we're going to go around the edges. Get on that spine area. Definitely. And then we're going to want to make sure we do our due diligence here in getting that glue on the spine. And I'm going to check and see how that does. So I'm going to hold it now upright, and I'm going to wrap this over to make sure it's not gapping anywhere, and I'm going to smooth it out. Make sure it's still straight, which I am. And you just got to take your time. Make sure that your front has not moved on you. It's a pretty easy process. And now I'm going to get over here. Now on this one, we're going to make sure that we don't go over onto our paper. So now I'm going to start putting it on the back of this felt. And then I can clean up anything that seeps over. We will have our bling, so you just want to make sure you get right along that edge in there. So when you're wrapping, it grabs those corners really good. Oh, I think I got plenty on there. And we will wrap it, make sure it's straight. And again, just kind of smooth it out. We are going to let this sit for just a bit. We just want to make sure that we hold this down. We make sure it's going around the corners, and you can look to see. You can wipe up any glue. It should be nice and flush against your spine. Alright, let's give this about 10 minutes. And again, keep your album shut. Do not open it yet. And just make sure you do rub on those corners there of that spine. Make sure that glue's there. So we're going to give about 10 minutes, and then we're going to come back. Isn't that pretty? It's been about 10 or 15 minutes, but if you were to open it up, you should be flat. If you see any places, you can always just kind of, mat it down a little. But it should be good. Now what I would like you to do is cut 2 strips of single bling that will fit top to bottom on your piece. If you are using this, where it has a bunch, measure up what you need, and then what you'll do is you will just cut for 2, and then you can cut your 2 strips that you're going to need for front and back, and then cut in between. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to place some glue right along that edge, and I'm going to use my art glitter glue, and I'm going to do this for the front and the back. Whoops, got a little crazy with my glue. That's okay, I'll wipe it up. So we just want to make sure that we have enough. Get that down. Okay, once your glue has dried enough, you can flip it over, and we're going to do the same thing back here. I got that down, and that looks good. So let's give that a moment to dry. We'll set that off to the side. In the meantime, let's grab our folder. We'll fold on the score line. I'm going to turn mine around the other way because I have some sort of blemish on the back, and I'm not sure if that's the paper got wet on my desk or what. So it's this, and our opening is going to be off to the right. In your paper pack, you will find this print with all the panels. What I would like you to do is stick this on your paper cutter, and we're going to cut right down the middle to divide these. I'm going to grab my paper cutter out, and I'll just bring that over. Cut right down the middle. We'll put this in our reserves. Next, we're going to cut in between to divide these. And I'll put this in my reserves. So this is what we have. Set this off to the side. Grab some of your solid colored cardstock. And it matters not if you're using a cream or whatever color you chose to match in to the collection. We're going to measure over 4 1/4 and cut. 4 1/4. I'll put this in my reserves. Next, I'm going to turn it like this, and I'm going to measure over 4 7/8 and cut. And then I'm going to check myself on this. I'll put that in my reserves. What I'm trying to do is get a piece that will fit in there, still allowing to have a little bit of a white border around there. And I've got mine. It has a slim little white border around it. And we're going to glue that down. If you are using a different paper like the Tula Norbergs on my original that I'm basing this off, what you'll do is measure so that you just have a little bit of white border. Okay, our opening is over here. All right, I got my paper cutter out. Let's grab this piece, and I'm going to bring it up close. What you're going to want to do is put this on your paper cutter, and you are going to cut right down here so it takes this little trim off with this bunch. And I'm going to show you mine in just a moment. Get this on here. So you can see what I've done. What I want you to do now is just measure over 4 inches and cut. So these two pieces we're going to put in our reserves. After you put that in your reserves, what we're going to do now is we're going to put this on our paper cutter, and we are going to cut right below the blue scroll. All we're doing is trying to get this to fit on our piece. So now you'll have this. This is the easy part. Measure over 4 5/8 and cut. So 4 5/8, and we're going to cut. I'm going to put that out of the way. Now when you grab this, this should fit right in there. But I am going to trim off this little bit over here so that that border is gone. And I'll show you mine in just a moment. So I trimmed off that. That's a start. If we were to lay this down evenly, it'll give us a nice border with our solid colored cardstock. We're going to glue this down. Make sure your opening is off to the right. So sometimes we just got to cut our paper to fit how we want it to fit and how we want it to look. So I'm just going to do the best I can here, get that as straight as possible, and I'll burnish that down. That's another thing. Once you lay your glue, you definitely want to burnish to get your glue spread out, to get it all down. All right, let's cut some bling, and we're going to place it right on the paper, not your border, but we're going to place that, cut some pieces that will fit around our piece. So I'm going to begin. Now I'm going to start with the shorter ends here. And we'll just get some bling on here. I'm going to grab the smaller one for across the bottom. And I'm gluing this right to the decorative paper. So far this is what I have. You do not have to do this if you do not want to, but I am. So I have mine done. The next thing is we got to let this dry. While this dries, let's get into one of our packs of magnets. Let's grab a plus, and I'm going to carefully open that. And I'm going to come in a good inch or so right in the middle here. And then I'm going to close it. And I'll grab a minus. A minus is going to just slip down and you'll have your paper under there. So what you're going to want to do is once the mate finds it, put a little glue underneath there. And just leave your paper there for just a moment. Make sure that this has dried. So carefully open this up. And we're going to get paper for the inside. In your reserves, you will have this piece. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to measure over 4 5/8 and cut. We will measure over again 4 5/8 and cut. So I'm going to move this out of the way and get my paper cutter. So again, we'll start at this end, measure over 4 5/8, 4 5/8, and we're going to cut. There's our first piece. We're going to measure over again 4 5/8. And cut. We'll put this little piece in our reserves. We got those two. The next thing that you're going to find in your reserves is this. And again, in this tutorial, we're going to try and conserve the best we can on paper. So we're going to do the same thing with this. We're going to measure over 4 5/8 and cut. We're going to measure over 4 5/8 and cut. So 4 5/8, and I'll stick that off with the other, and we'll measure over again 4 5/8. And this little piece will go in our reserves. Let's grab this. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at this, and we're going to place that down. We're not going to glue it just yet, but notice that you have a nice border of white top and bottom, and you're going to want a little bit of a border as well on the side. And if we take this and flip it over, we can bring it on top just over that little brown trim line. And then what we'll have is a nice little decorative piece over here, and you would never know that we just seamed two pieces together. So we're going to start with one piece here. And this is going to be over here. And top and bottom. Okay. And I'm going to carefully burnish because that magnet is back behind it. Now I'm going to grab this piece and I'm going to lay it over it. And you should still have a white border before you hit your score line, by the way. And we'll just make sure that we get that nice and straight. There we go. And we'll burnish that down. And we're going to do the same thing with this one. So I don't think it really matters which side you put the glue on as far as these. They both have that little trim. And we're going to do the same thing. Try to line it up so that it's going to be the same top and bottom with these pieces. So if you've never paper craft before and you know that you're going to be using a lot of paper and you want to make things work for you, you can always seam things together. And that's what we're going to be doing here. So on this piece, I'm going to flip it over. And I'm just going to stick it just like this. So that is what we have. And it looks really good. Grab grab this out of your paper pack. This is the back side of our cover. And I would think that we would like to place something like this. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to come and let's grab Dreaming. So one thing about this is let's not cut into this. We may need this. So you're just going to come up underneath this one, come over and get that out. Try not to separate anything else off this page because it does become very difficult. Oop, I gotta clean these scissors. It becomes very difficult to find things in our reserves if things are separated. So I'm just gonna come up and I'm gonna cut what I need. Now we're going to put this in our reserves. Dreaming, let's cut out and around this piece. And I'm going to grab my other scissors and make my life easier. I'll show you what mine looks like when I'm done. You do not have to be a good fussy cutter, guys, because I am not the best. A lot of people say that it looks good how I do it, but you know, I have a lot of help with the techniques that I use when we're done, because we will be backing this with some cardstock, and I think that helps out a lot with making a piece look very clean and nice. I have mine cut out. Let's grab a piece of our scrap cardstock, and this isn't the white one, this is the one that we use to back behind here. And what we're going to do is we're going to glue this down. So if you're using cream, use cream. If you're using blue and cream, you can choose whatever it is you want. If you'd like to wait to see how this looks with cream before you decide to use your blue or whatever, you can. So I'm just gluing this down. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out and around this again, but leaving a little bit of that cream border. And I'll show you what mine looks like as soon as I'm done. And you definitely do not need to be perfect. Here is mine. What we're going to do is we're going to add a little glue to the bottom. Just going across the bottom. That way if you want to slide a picture back behind, you can. On this page, this is our cut apart sheet. Well, let's just cut out this little rose here, and we'll cut out and around that. Right there. We'll put this in our reserves. For this one, we're not going to back, but what we are going to do is glue that down right here. So I'm going to add a little glue here, just a little bit, and over on the back side underneath this leaf to keep that down. Okay. Let's get this on the cover. So the idea of this is to have some of the flowers peeking out from the top, and we're going to glue that down. So let's remove this. If we want to add something else later to the cover, we can. I'm going to open this up so then I can carefully burnish. Once you have it down, then we're going to carefully burnish down on the inside. Careful around your magnet. And I think that looks absolutely beautiful. We have the trellis here. Our cover is complete. We may come back and do something with this, but I think it looks really nice. We are now moving on to page 1. We're on page 1 and we have some pre-cuts from our pre-cutting guide that you would have downloaded. So let's go over them. You may not be able to see this very well, but it is on your pre-cutting guide. So what we did was we cut two pieces that were 5 7/8 by 8 inch. We called them a fold out. On each one, we laid them on our scoring board, so we were 5 7/8 across. We scored it at a 1/2 inch and 5/8 inch on both of these. Next, we had two pieces we cut that were 4 3/8 by 6 inch. We called these our pocket. We first laid this on our scoring board, so we were 4 3/8 across. We scored it at a 1/2 inch. Then the instructions said to turn your piece so it is now laying 6 inches across. And we scored at a 1/2 inch, and we scored at 5 1/2 inches on each one of these. And by the way, it does not matter if your scoring starts from the right or from the left. It doesn't matter. So either way. Our last pre-cut was a 4 1/8 by 6 1/4, and we called that a folder. What we did was we laid it so we were 6 1/4 across, and then we scored at 3 1/8. Okay, let's get started. The first piece that we're going to start working with is this. And on the back, it looks like this. We're going to turn it sideways, so we're looking at it like this. We're going to start here, and we're going to measure over 8 inches and cut. So this is what you should have. Place that in your reserves. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to measure over 10 1/8 and cut. This piece here is our main page. Beautiful photograph would look good right here. Let's get out our fold outs. So first thing, I'm going to move this off to the side a little bit. We're going to fold on those score lines, and you're going to need your tool for this to help you sharpen those up. And we'll do it on this one as well. And just be patient on getting these little score lines all crisp. Here's our main page. We're going to have a hinge off to the right, and we'll have a hinge off to the left. We're going to attach this fold out. So if you notice, you will have two score lines. You'll have an inside score line and an outside. On the outside score line, you're going to pinch and crease. So you'll still be able to see your other score line. We're going to take this and we're going to wrap that flap back behind. And this is 8 inches, which is the same as your decorated paper. Now once you have that all the way scooted in there, you're going to pinch and hold it. And keep your hand holding it until you get it down, and then place a hand down so it does not slide. If you feel it slide, you'll want to realign it for sure. So now I'm just going to place some glue on this hinge. And we'll fold it over, and we'll use our tool to burnish that. Now immediately after you do these, I may not remind you, but please open this up and feel to make sure that you have no glue seeping out into your hinge on the inside. Okay, so for right now, what you can do on this one is fold back on that other score line and push in until it makes like this. That's our spacing. That's why we had that extra little score line in there. We're going to grab the one with the hinge off to the left, and you have an inside score line and you have that outside. On the outside, let's pinch and crease. Again, we'll still see that other score line. We're going to hook it on to our page. Make sure that they are straight there. We're going to pinch, hold, flip this over, and tack down this flap. And then we're going to check it, make sure no glue seeped into the inside there. So I'm going to open this up, check, and I'm pretty good. So once you've checked yourself, you can then fold back on the other score line and push it in until it creates your little thing like that, looking like that. And you can maneuver to make sure that your crease is the same, and it should fit even. There we go. We're going to start by opening this up, and we're going to find our paper for here and here. In your paper pack, you will find this print. It has the fairy, the cradle, and it's blue. We're going to do 2 cuts. The first one is we're going to measure over 5 inches and cut. And that's going to put you right on the other side of the fairy, just right there. So that's our first cut. Let's do that. Once you've made that cut, put this one off to the side. We're going to turn this one sideways, and then we'll get after this one. Measure over 5 inches and cut. The piece we want is the shorter one. And we're conserving on paper. We have a pocket to lay over this so no one will know that this is cut so short. So we're going to take this one and once we have our glue on, we're going to come over here, and I'm going to try and get this over a little bit more. We'll come up to the top. You will leave a little bit of a white border up there. You will have a border on the side, and you will have a border over here and before you hit that outside score line. So you don't want to be on that score line or near it. So I'm going to bring mine up and show you. As soon as I'm done here, I'm going to wipe up some glue that kind of popped out. But you can see where that score line is right here and how much I kind of left. And that will give us plenty over here. So I had you set this one off to the side. Actually put this in your reserves. Grab this piece out. It is the bottom part to this. We're going to do it this way, so I don't have to cut that one up just yet. What we're going to do with this one is we'll turn it sideways so that the image is right up here. Let's just measure over 5 inches and cut. All right, this should be 5 by 5, and we're going to do the same thing we did over there. And we're going to glue this down. And you'll want to try and keep it even with how much spacing you left there if you can. I think I did okay. Let's set this off to the side. What we're going to get at is our 2 pieces, which are our pockets. There's my other one. So let's grab our pockets. What we do on this one, we'll be doing the same on this one. So you will notice that we have score lines down here, and then one should go across the bottom. In the corner, it makes a little square. We're going to cut out those squares on each one of these. You do not need to keep the little squares that you cut off. Those can just go in the trash. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn it over and we're going to fold on all those score lines on both pieces. All right, the next step is if you were to pull in the side here of this and pull your flap down at the bottom, you're going to want to place glue down in the left-hand corner. You don't want glue past the point of this little flap here. You want to keep it contained in that little corner. Once you do that, you fold in those and you pull up the bottom. And we burnish. We're going to do that with this one. So dab some down in the corner on that bottom flap, pull in our sides, pull up the bottom. These are our pockets, and this piece is the bottom piece because that's down here, and that is what keeps our paper from falling through. We're going to add some glue to this. Make sure you get your little flap. And I'll start over here. I'm going to line up the sides with the side of my decorated paper, and I'm going to come down to the bottom, making sure it's even there, and I'm going to press it down. And then I'm going to burnish it. So my opening is right here. We're going to do the same with this one. So I'm going to come to the inside where my paper is, and I'll bring it down as far as I brought down this one. Line that up and press it down, and then we'll burnish. Let's set this off to the side for a moment while we get our paper for that. In your reserves, you will have this piece. On the back, it is this. So we have a couple cuts here. The first one is we're just going to measure over a half and cut. So this is what I trimmed off, 1/2 inch. Next, we're going to measure over 5 inches and cut. So keep this one handy. Now we're going to turn it looking at it like this. Measure over 3 3/4 and cut. When you're done, that just takes a little bit off there. All we want to do is make sure that this fits. So if you were to bring this piece to the bottom of your pocket and center that side by side, it should fit right on that pocket. And it will give us a white lip at the top, so we can kind of distinguish between our pocket and our paper back there. So I'm going to lay mine. Okay, we're going to come over to this side, measure over 5 inches, and cut. Let's turn it sideways now, measure over 3 3/4 and cut. Let's apply glue. Well, first, before you apply glue, what I always like us to do is make sure our cut was accurate. There's nothing worse than having glue on the back of your piece to find out we miscut. So that should work. Make sure you made the accurate cut, because it can happen. It's happened to me several times, and I've been doing this a long time. So that looks pretty good to me. The story's all there. And the next thing we're going to do is just fold these over. We're going to get our paper for these, but we do need to place a magnet on this side. But we have to get our piece ready. So what we want to do is grab this out of our reserves. You see this piece right up here? It says, "I made a wish and you came true." We're going to cut that out. I'll put this back in my reserves. We do need to get our paper, but let's just get this ready to go. All we're going to do is cut out and around this image. I will show you mine as soon as I am done. When I am done, I am then going to mount it onto some white cardstock. I've got mine cut out. It's not perfect, but that's okay. And I'm going to find a piece of white cardstock. Here's a piece. I'm going to glue this down, and then I'm going to cut out and around, leaving a little white border. And I'll show you mine as soon as I am done. I finished mine. And we're going to set this off to the side, and we're going to get our paper now for this. We're ready to start cutting, and in your paper pack you will find another one of these. We're going to turn this sideways. We'll measure over 7 3/4 and cut. Once you've made that cut, this is what you should have. We're going to make 2 cuts. We're going to measure over 5 inches and cut. We're going to measure over again 5 inches and cut. This is what you should have when you are finished making those cuts. The first one that we're going to lay down is this one over on this side. And when you lay it, you're going to center that top, bottom, side to side. You'll still have white border up and down. Do not glue down your other one yet. I'm thinking that I want to make a folder, an extra folder. I'm thinking about it. Okay, let's get that down. Okay, close this up. What we're going to do with this is we're going to be placing a magnet over here. I'm going to tell you first before we do it. Sometimes it's easier for you to visualize before we do some of these things. We're going to glue this right in the middle, but we're only going to put glue back behind here right along the edge, so we still have a tuck area in there. So we're going to flip this over. Let's grab a plus. And again, the magnet is going to go under this side, so just rotate it and place it down. You can leave maybe about until you start about 3/8 inch in from the side. Now we're just going to have to figure this out, how wide we need to go. So I'm going to place some glue, and again, it's right along the edge. This is a good time to get a piece of scrap cardstock to slide back behind so your glue doesn't get back there. So now I'm just going to try and center that. It looks like the bottom here. And just make sure you have enough. I'm going to go over just a little bit. That looks like it's pretty straight. I'm going to open this up now, and I'm going to burnish, and I'm going to make sure that no glue is seeping over off the side there. So you want to clean that up. Okay, let's grab the mate. So I'm going to grab a minus, and we're going to just stick that right on over there. We'll remove the little backing. Make sure your spacing is good, you're lined up, and you're going to let it fall, and you're going to press. Now these magnets are really strong, so I found that it's easier to shift it up a little and then lift rather than lift straight up. Now let's apply glue to this, and we're going to glue that down. Now one thing that's easier to do is to fold this one in first so that you can line up the top of this decorative paper with that one. And place it. Trying to keep it even with your other paper there. And that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to move this one out of the way. I'm going to burnish. Watch out for that magnet that you don't tear your paper. Just be real careful around it. Okay, we can fold that in. That looks great. We have a 4 1/8 by 6 1/4 folder. And we're going to fold on that score line. Now no magnet's going to be placed here. What's going to happen is when we place this down, it goes on this one at an angle so that this will catch it and keep it shut. So you may not want to place it down once we get our paper on until you can place this down and slide it so that it catches it, but not under your magnet so that your magnet stays good. So that's just something. Let's get our paper for this. The first thing I would like us to do is to grab this out of our reserves. And you see the little scroll here? We're going to cut that out. As best we can. Okay, let's set that off to the side. Place that back in our reserves. In your reserves, you will have this piece. It has some of the trellis down there, and it has this on the other side. We're going to turn it sideways. We're going to make 2 cuts. We're going to measure over 3 7/8 and cut, and we'll measure over again 3 7/8 and cut. This is what you should have. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to put this one over to the right and leave a little bit of a border, and there'll be a border top and bottom. This one's going to come over the top of it just like that, and we're going to glue those down. Again, making good use of some of the more narrow scraps. That looks pretty even, I'd say. So the one with the trellis goes up there first, and then this one will go over the top. Now there is a bird cage on the back, and I am putting glue on this side because we have this to go over anyway. So I'll just line that up with the other one. Make it look even. Okay, let's cut out and around the scroll. We're not going to back this with any cardstock. This is what mine looks like. We'll just apply our glue. And we will center that in there as best we can. That's good. Let's open that up. Grab this out of your reserves. Measure over 2 7/8 and cut. Measure over again 2 7/8 and cut. This is what you should have. Just double these up now so that they're on top. We're going to measure over 3 7/8 and cut. After making that cut, that's what you should have. Flip them over and make sure that they fit inside, and they should. Let's glue those down. All right, let's close that up. When you close it, what you'll want to do is use your tool to make sure you're pretty creased along that fold to help it stay down. When we place glue, we're only going to place glue right behind here, a straight line, and over. So I'm just going to flip it over. Here's my fold. Line here and here. So I can still use it as a tuck. Now this is the part you're going to want to just slide it until it hits the magnet, and then just place it there. Slightly at an angle. Just so that when the magnet comes down, it will keep that down. So once you've done that, you can open it up and burnish. See? And it will hold that shut. Let's do one more thing. I want to show you how this works, and I want us to do a folder over here. If you would, cut a piece of cardstock that is 6 1/4 by 8 inch. To make a folder. And then we're going to fold on that score line. Make sure you crease that. In your reserves, you will have this sheet. What I'd like you to do is turn it sideways, measure over 7 inches, and cut. Once you have that cut, what I would like you to do is stick this on your paper cutter, and I want you to cut straight down on each side because this is the panel that we want. So I will show you mine. My first cut was this. I'll put this in my reserves. And here's something that's really easy. We can just measure over 3 3/4 to make it easier and cut. That was much easier given a measurement. Turn it, measure over 6 inches, and cut. Here is our panel. If you were to place it down, it will give you a nice border. Your opening is off to the right, and we're just going to glue this down. Now we're not going to put any decorated paper on the inside. At the end of the tutorial, you can come back with your solid colored cardstock, or you can use scraps to seam together. But I did want to do this with you because I thought that we needed to know the story about the baby being born, Sleeping Beauty. This will just tuck right there. Okay, let's flip this over. And what we're going to do is we're going to place score tape around the outside like a picture frame. We're going to go 1 down the middle and 2 on each side. We are not going to plant this in our book yet though. We're going to wait until we finish up page 2 and then we will place it in our book. I found it's much easier that way to line them up because the inside of page 1 is actually the inside of our chipboard, and our chipboard is bigger than our inner pages, like page 2. So by placing page 2 first, then you can line up with it. So I'm going to complete this, and I'll show you what mine looks like with all the score tape. Do not remove your score tape because, again, we're going to just set this off to the side when we're done. So here is mine with the score tape. Here is page 1. Page 1 is complete. Let's move on to page 2, and we'll just set this aside.